All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the network settings. So let me share the screen again. Did we lose anything? Manny didn't show up today. I don't know what happened to him. I'll have to call him later. All righty. Okay, so I've got two virtuals open. The one we've been working on, where we're talking about putting an IP address, and the one I originally, well, actually the clone. This is a full clone in this case, and like I said, I did it before we started, and it took about 20-30 minutes to actually do a full clone, where a linked clone would just, I think, just take seconds. So you can link a clone very quickly, but to do a full clone, it has to copy everything over again. And that's kind of like cloning when you clone one physical hard drive to another, you know, and we talked a little bit about that in the hardware section. If you're building a computer up and then you're making, building 20 more computers of the same, what we typically do there is install the operating system, all the updates and all the programs on one computer, and then just clone them to the other ones. However, like I talked about with the virtual clone, where I had to get rid of the MAC address so it's not the same, when you clone computers, when you first start up the first computer, it has something called a security identifier in it. So it's a security feature because you log into any Windows computer, so there's security in it even before it's connected to a network. So when we do clone, we have to remove that security identifier, or it was commonly known as a SID. And we'll talk about that sometime, how you get rid of that and make it unique. So anyway, I'm going to log into this other machine right here. Now, when we're setting up a network, there are some things we need to figure out as to what we're going to do. I have to move these a little bit apart. The zoom bar is getting in the way. Can everybody see both of these operating systems, or?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this one is coming up just a second. Let's give it a different background so it looks better. Okay. All right. We went into here whether to obtain an IP address automatically or use the following IP addresses. For the beginning labs, we're going to put in static addresses because initially I don't expect you to know how to set up a DHCP server. So we're going to start by putting a static address in each computer. But before I do, oh, Mike needs to come back in. Okay, but before I do that, I want to open up the VirtualBox. Okay. I've got two virtual machines open in here. This one down here, the Windows clone, and this Windows 7 one here. You notice they say they're running. So I'm going to highlight that one, and I'm going to go up to Machine and go to Settings on it. And then so we're talking about the network. I'm going to click on the network option here. And I've got some options here. Just like before when I said I was making the clone, I had to make sure it had a unique burned in MAC address so that each virtual machine would simulate a different burned in address. Here, I'm going to be concerned with the IP addresses that I give each of these computers. So we've got some different network options here. Bridged internal network, blah, 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 NAT network, cloud network. I haven't played with that one. Obviously, it says experimental. That would be interesting to play with. So what is NAT? This is normally the one it would be set if we didn't make any changes to it. Does anybody know what NAT refers to?
Network address translation.
Yes, network address translation. And if you have a router at home, if you have a little router that you're connecting multiple machines to, it's using network address translation. Now, the reason it needs to do this translation is because your internet connection, my internet connection, anybody's home internet connection, many business network, they're only getting a single IP address issued to them unless they're a medium to large size company. Well, we can't, if I have 6 or 8 devices in my home, really, I can't be using just one IP address because each device needs its own IP address. So with this network address translation protocol, and this is something we're running on our router. And because we're also doing this in virtual machines because the VirtualBox or VMware software is going to be acting like a virtual router. So what happens is my ISP gives me one IP address, but my router converts that to multiple addresses. So it needs its translation protocol in order to work. What it does, it translates an IP address, which is a real world IP address that my internet service provider and your internet service provider will give you, to private ones inside our network. And what's an example of a private address?
168.
192.168 something something, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so what happens with this network address translation is that your router from your ISP has been given an address, but it's something like 67.87.12.2 or something like that. It's a real IP address. But you cannot give that real IP address to multiple machines inside of your network because each one has to have a unique one. So your private ones can be translated to that public address. So they get translated out to the public one to connect to the internet. So that is one option we can take here, but we're going to choose a bridge adapter option. What this is going to do is it's going to require that you use a static address on all your virtual machines. And the static address you're going to use is going to be the same network as whatever network your host computer's on. And more than likely that will be 192.168.0 something. And how do we find that out? Well, we type in CMD. Everybody see this?
Yes.
And then what is the command we type in here?
ipconfig.
ipconfig, right? Okay, and then we just look down here, whichever one we're using. Gets a little confusing, but I'm using the Wi-Fi right here. So the address on my host computer is 192, kind of predicted, right? 192.168.0 something. So it's 192.168.0.160. So for my virtual machines, I'll have to make them 192.168.0 and then pick a number other than 160. And remember that it could be any number between what and what?
1 and 126.
That was kind of a trick question. It could
Whatever
be between,
number you set your router to.
That is also a trick question. It could be between 1 and 254, because those are all the usable numbers. The numbers actually go from 0 to 255, but you can never use the lowest number or the highest number for your computer. So you can never use the 0 and you can never use the top number. So keep in mind those numbers like 255, because those numbers you want to remember. So the last number here can be between 1 and 254. So when I give my virtual machines IP addresses, I'm going to pick between there and there. So let's do that.
I'm sorry, you're creating a static IP right now?
Yeah, I'm creating a static IP.
Okay, and that's why you said the last number we can change to whatever?
Yeah, the last number we could change to whatever. As long as it's not the 160, I don't want to conflict with that. That's the IP address on my computer. So you want to check that one. Okay, so you want to do an IP config to see what address you're getting. So I'm going to change this to a bridge adapter. Okay, I'm going to get that out of the way. So I'm going to say, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but use the following IP address. So what am I going to put in here? I'm going to put in 192. I'm going to match my computer. 168.0, and let's just, I'll put in 161. It doesn't have to be the next one after, but I'll put that in. Subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. And how would I find my gateway?
In the IP config?
Yeah, let's go back to IP config. I should have closed that, right? Or actually, I think it's down here. So yeah, under the IP config, it shows the IP address of this computer, the subnet mask, and the gateway. Well, the gateway is going to be the same. The IP address is going to be different because I don't want to conflict with this computer, but every computer on my network is going to use the same gateway.
That's the router's address, right?
Yeah, and that is the router's address. So they're all going to use the same way to get out of the network. So we want to put that in here. 0, 1. And it's become pretty standard that the gateway will typically end in a 1. It doesn't have to, there's no reason, but typically it's standard among network administrators to make their router the lowest number. It just makes it easier by doing that. Then if you were working on a network, you didn't know the router, you could always probably guess it. All right, and then we'll probably just put in for fun 8. Why
Does
not?
it matter which one?
Does it matter which one? What?
Which DNS server you'd be connecting to?
Well, kind of yes and no. Let's say the ISP has a local one. Well, it could be that that one's faster because it's more local to you. It could be that you picked a DNS server that's maybe halfway around the world, so it might affect the speed a little bit. Also, it could affect, remember we talked about DNS information in it. If it's a local one and you're setting up web servers and things like that, well, that one's going to be updated with the DNS information a lot quicker than other ones. So, there's some minor considerations to think about.
Well, if you wanted to connect to the quickest, wouldn't it do it automatically?
Well, no, it's going to go to this one first, and then it's going to do a recursive lookup to the other ones. So it's always going to, whichever one you tell it is the one it's going to hit first. After that, yeah, it's going to then figure out the quickest way to resolve the information. But if let's say you had one that was very local to you and very fast, and speed was important, well, maybe you would put that instead. Generally, it's, for a lot of circumstances, it's not that huge of difference, but when we get into complex networks, it could be an issue. Alrighty, so let's okay that. We're good there. What is the advanced? Okay, you can see under advanced, it has the IP address settings. You can add multiple DNS servers in here. So especially if you're running your own DNS servers, we run our own. We run one of our own at the school. What happens if that one failed? Then you can point the computer to check a next one and the next one and the next one and so forth. So you can add, under the advanced settings, you can add multiple ones in here. This one right here, the Windows Internet Naming Server, is really not used anymore. This was because Microsoft took so long to adopt all the internet conventions, they had their own version of DNS called WINS. And typically we try to avoid that if we can. So you will see, even though that this tab for WINS still exists on Windows 10, typically it's not something you want to use. It's very old in legacy. All right. So once we've done that, we've got a static address in there. And if we...
Are you trying to link two machines to communicate with one another?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if I spell that right, now you can see I've got that address that I statically put in there. So when I can check it by doing an IP config. So I've got that 192.168.0.191. All right, let's go over to the other machine. Let's get rid of that. I don't want it anymore. Let's get over to this machine. Make it a bit bigger. Okay, and let me go down to the VirtualBox settings again, if I can. Now this one was the clone down here. So I'm going to go down up to machine settings for that one. I'm going to go to network. And I'm also going to, actually I want it as a bridge. So it's already been set as a bridge. Normally it'd be set on NAT by default. But whenever I do a static address, I want to set it to a bridge.
Brian, what's the difference between NAT and NAT network?
I'm not 100% sure at the moment. I think you could set up different individualized NAT networks with it, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's kind of one of those fancy options that probably is not going to have much use in the NAT network. But so I can't say I've used it. But I think it would be setting up individual NAT networks, if I'm not mistaken. Just like the cloud one, I think the cloud one is kind of, I don't know if this would be useful for maybe connecting your virtuals to virtuals on Amazon Web Services, maybe, or something like that. Obviously, this one's a little bit more specialized as well.
I haven't seen that before.
Yeah, I think it's pretty new on here. I think that is pretty new. So you can see the way things are going. You know, pretty soon, a few years, we'll be doing everything on the cloud, and we probably won't own many computers. The adapter right here, you can see on here, you have to tell the virtual machine what physical wireless adapter you have. So if your physical computer has multiple network adapters on it, Wi-Fi and Ethernet and so forth, then you have to make sure you're spelling out the right one, because sometimes you make the mistake and you point one to one device and another virtual machine to a different device, and then you find they don't talk to each other. So this is something you want to be aware of as well. So make sure we leave that alone. Okay, so let's get that out of the way, and let's go over to this machine right here. Okay, again, I'm going to go to the control panel. I'm going to change that view to large icons, and then from there, I'm going to go back to network and sharing again. And from here, I'm going to, again, click on Change Adapter Settings, double click on here. I think that's Moto again. Then I'm going to click on Properties again. And it's unfortunately a little small here, but I'm going to do the same thing. Double click on TCP/IP version 4, and quickly I'm just going to put in what we put in, 192.168.0, and we'll do 162, right?
Oh, you have to change it?
This one is a separate computer, so it has to be, whoops, what happened here? 192.168.
Yeah, it would make sense for it to have a different one.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, each one of these has to be unique. Just think of different houses. Think you're an Amazon driver having, you know, you send packages to different houses in the street. They have to each have a different house number, right?
Yes.
All righty. So
So they're both,
2552. What was that?
they're both on the same network by the first two octets. And
Correct. By the first three.
okay, the first three. And
Yeah.
the other thing that does not change is the default gateway.
Correct. The default gateway, because they all use the same router.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason I say the first three numbers, because look at the 255s. Anything that lines up with the 255 is the part that is the same for every computer on your network. So it has to be the 192.168.0 because all three of those numbers have 255s on the subnet mask line up with them. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so down here is actually our router address, right? So every computer is sending traffic out the same router to get to the internet. And we just said down here, we're going to
What
use...
if the DNS server is not the same? Would it still work?
Well, the DNS server only has to be a valid DNS server. So down where I just put in preferred DNS server of 8888, that just has to be any valid DNS server to work. In our simple example here, there are more complex networks where that would be might be different.
Okay, but this would not affect the two machines communicating to one another?
Yes and no. That's where it gets more complex. That's where we may use an internal DNS server, but I don't have one to point to. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
But if I do have an internal one for these machines, then yes, I would use that. And we will get into that in network section 2. Okay. Okay. Close. And let me bring up and see if it looks good over here. I know that's a little small, but it does say 192.168.0.162. Okay, so how do we check connectivity between the two machines?
NetStat,
What's a simple way to do it?
ipconfig all.
That just checks the statistics on the local machine. It doesn't check connectivity between machines.
Ping the other
Ping.
computer's IP address.
Ping the other computer's IP address.
So .160.
So ping. So I want to ping what? 192.168.0.162. I could also ping 160 because I've bridged my network. So all three computers, the physical computer and the two guest computers, with any luck, should communicate with each other. Knock on wood, right? So we'll hit enter here and see what happens. Okay, so I got a reply back. So fantastic. It's exactly what I wanted. We've got communication between the two. Let's do it the other way. Let me go over to the machine. I know this is a little small, but I'm going to ping. We're going to ping 192.168.0.161. And I also got a reply from that one as well. So they're sending out the little ping packets and they're getting a reply back. I think we talked a little about ping. We talked about the response time. You can see because these are both on the same local area network, the time is less than 1 millisecond, and that's the quickest this can actually show you. So because they're on the same local network, or this virtual network in this case, they're responding back virtually instantly with each other.
So the ping sends 4 packets?
The ping sends 4 packets on the Windows one. If you do a Linux one, I think it just does a repeated one. There are actually switches on the ping if you want it to ping constantly. there is a switch to make it do that. But the default, by default, in Windows, the ping, it does 4 of them. And sometimes you'll see it where you get like 75% response or 50% or 25. So sometimes if you have a flaky connection, sometimes you'll see it responds, but you don't get a response to every packet. That just tells you kind of that your connection is not that good, or the connection is really busy at the time. Okay, so this is the basic network setup in network section 1. This is the important thing. Until you get these machines communicating with each other, you can't get anywhere. In fact, let's see if I can ping also the host machine, which we remember, as we remember, was 160. And all right, I'm getting pings all 3 ways. So I've got all 3 computers networked together.
Okay.
So we're all happy, right?
Because you also have a TCP enabled, you're able to share files, correct?
Yes, that would be the next step, would be to now share files. But this is fundamentally what you have to get done first. So
Right.
I just want to point this out. You know, people will come in and I want to get my email or my printing to work or my file sharing and so forth, and they haven't done the basic level 1 stuff. If you haven't got this done and you're trying to do other things, it will never work. So we want to make sure that we have these. In this case, I've set up a bridge network on my virtual machines. I have used the same subnet as my actual computer. So, and I'm getting that from my router within my building. So most of you will have a 192.168 address. There are possibly other addresses. What would be another address your router could give you? Another possible one would be a private one. Private one would be 10, because 10 is also private. So I've seen some routers where they give you a 10, and the other possible one is a 172.31, which is the other private range. So yeah, so keep this in mind when you get to the network section. You know, this is how we start off, and this is how we get things going. So let's take a break from that and do some questions. All right, so everybody test our knowledge again. Ready? Okay, a technician needs to log a user's computer to fix the user's corrupt local profile. Excuse me, let me read that one more time. A technician needs to log into a user's computer to fix the corrupt local profile. Which of the following connectivity tools will allow the technician to connect to the user's computer? You know what? I've only used remote assistance once or twice, and I have not found it the most useful thing in the world. And you know, it's like it's just not used very often.
What about D?
D, yeah, I think D is what they're looking for, remote desktop. Mm-hmm. In the real world, what are other alternatives to using remote desktop?
Team share?
Yeah, TeamViewer, yeah, TeamViewer, and log me in and go to my PC, et cetera, et cetera. There's a bunch of them. Mm-hmm. So Zoom, yeah, even Zoom, I guess. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had one of the teachers that was teaching using TeamViewer. I'm not quite sure how. I didn't know you could actually teach through TeamViewer. But her problem was she was using the free version, right? And they found out that she was using too much bandwidth, so they cut her off. She was very disappointed with that. But I thought that was kind of neat, being able to use TeamViewer instead of Zoom. So But let's talk about the profile, because every once in a while you will have this happen to a computer, that the profile gets corrupted, and it is the biggest pain to fix. Sometimes you just have to create, you have to create another user account. You have to create another profile. In order to create another profile, you have to create another user account, and then copy everything in the existing profile over to that one. And let's take a look where the profile is located. If I can bring up my computer. Okay, and it is under, it's under your C drive, under the users folder, and here they are right here. So every time you create another user, it creates another folder in here, and this is where the profile information would be. So that's where you might have to copy information out of one and put it into another one. So if you create another profile. Okay, and they say, I figured they were not going to go with remote assistance, so it's possible, but I have never, yeah.
I wasn't sure if the question was asking if they wanted this to be done remotely or.
I know the question was not very clear, was it? It was not clear.
Because the technician could have been by your side.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. And needed to be an administrator to make changes.
Exactly, yeah, and to do remote desktop, you need to be an administrator, or on that computer, you need to be granted the ability to remote desktop into it. So not just anybody can remote desktop into a computer. But usually if you're in a corporate network, you've set yourself up as administrator on the machines in your network so that you can remote into them. Okay. An end user needs to completely reinstall Windows 7 on a home computer, but it did not come with any OS disks. How would the technician accomplish this?
Restore?
Refresh.
Refresh.
System refresh, which you can do in Windows 10. Or the manufacturer comes up with a recovery partition, right? Yeah, it's possible as well. Mm-hmm.
A recovery partition, wouldn't that require to do like a backup?
Yeah, the only way I could see this is the manufacturer provides a recovery partition. You know how HP and others do.
It's already automatically installed as a partition on there.
A lot of manufacturers do that now because they cheapen out and they don't give you the DVD anymore, right? So I always thought that was kind of annoying that they didn't give you the DVD. Okay, machines now don't have DVDs, but they could give you a flash drive, right? But they don't. And it always bugs me because what if the hard drive crashes? Then the recovery partition doesn't help you. But yeah,
strategy. They're going to want you to buy a new machine from them.
Some of them, I don't know if they still do it anymore, would give you a utility that would allow you to burn the recovery information onto a separate DVD. Of course, most people, when they buy a brand new laptop, are too excited about having the laptop to take the time, right, to do all of that. So, you know, it's just like why they could not provide you with an external source for the operating system. It's just irritates me.
Derek got that answer. Good job.
You did. All right, good job.
I get it.
Okay, Derek, you look like you're
Makes sense. Using the process of elimination, it just makes sense.
Yeah, Derek, you under the weather?
What's that?
Are you under the weather?
I am, yes.
Yeah, I know. You look like, even through Zoom, it looks like you're, yeah, okay. Well, hope you get better. A user is unable to find the preferred default network printer in the printers list in the user profile. Which of the following is the first step that should be taken?
Reboot.
Check to see if the printer's on.
Yeah, check to see if the printer's on, right? But why wouldn't it be in the list? It shouldn't have to be on if it's if if it's a local printer, it shouldn't have to be on. If it's a network printer, it's been mapped, I mean, essentially.
I may retract my answer. I think you're onto something.
Okay. What do you
If
go with, Mike?
it's already recognized, it does not need to be on to be seen by the computer.
Right, yeah. I think you'd have to remap the printer if it's not showing up in a list.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, it's not technically really mapping, but they're using the term mapping here. When you install a printer, when you install a network printer, you go in and you add a port and you add a TCP/IP port and you add in the IP address and so forth. And then that printer becomes an object within the control panel, right? Within devices and printers, you see that. Now, if that inadvertently got deleted, so essentially that's a mapping. I mean, it's not technically a mapping, but it's kind of.
Pretty much the thing to configure it back onto the network.
Yeah, so if that object doesn't appear there, then any program you go into is not going to show up either.
Okay.
So
it disappeared off the network. It's not visible by the network.
well, the printer object actually got deleted in the control panel. Let me bring up what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's go into devices and printers. And you can see down here, well, I've got a duplicate here, but this is my only real printer right here, this HP right here, the one that's sort of white looking in color. These are all bogus ones that we usually delete. They're print to file ones. The real printer is right here. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, it's in here twice. If that object was gone, then I go into my application, try to print, it's also gone there. So this printer is on my Wi-Fi network. So it's kind of like a printer mapping. It's like a mapping to the printer in my other room. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so I would say this. I'm not confident that's going to be the answer, but what does everybody say?
I say reboot.
I say
Okay.
reboot. Yeah.
Okay, reboot,
Map the printer.
map printer. Okay, let's see what they say. All right, they did agree with, thankfully. Map the printer. So you see what I'm talking about when I interpret what they mean by mapping a printer?
So it would be easier to map the printer over rebooting.
Well, if the printer was gone and it's on the network, it's probably not going to find it again. You're going to have to go through the process of adding the printer back again.
Okay.
If it were a local USB printer, it would probably find it again. But it says network printer.
Okay.
I just went with first step because there's been times where our computers don't connect to the server for certain programs, and just simply rebooting them or actually right-clicking on the server and connecting them was.
Yeah, that's good. I agree with that thinking. You know, there's the old saying in Windows, when all else fails, reboot. And rebooting does fix a lot of things. In this case, if the printer was gone and it's a network printer, then it's unlikely that rebooting would bring it back.
So it's not a hardware issue, it's a network issue?
Yeah, it's a network issue. Yeah. Okay, a technician needs to perform a backup while a system is running. Which of the following services allows this to be accomplished? I believe this is shadow copying, but what do you guys think?
The robocopy and the Xcopy, aren't those DOS commands?
Yeah. It's not saying you couldn't back up using them.
I mean,
You could, what?
Will those two, the A and C, is that even correspond to Windows?
You can do them. You could actually do a robocopy or an Xcopy. So you could get Xcopy star.star, to your USB drive. But the problem, what's the problem you're going to have if you do that? What is the problem you have with backup when you have things running?
It could miss files.
Yeah, open files do not back up. So if you have any files that are open, they can't be copied.
It's going to
So
give
you-
you an error message.
Yeah, it's going to give you, so you need to use the shadow copy. And let's see if they agree with it.
So what is the shadow copy?
It is a way of caching the files so that you have a closed version of it that can be backed up.
First time I hear that.
Yeah, Windows Server uses it on their backup scheme. Alrighty, a technician has been tasked with loading the operating system on every PC with a blank hard drive on a network. I think we already know where this one's going. A technician wishes to install the operating system with minimal physical interaction with the PCs. Which of the following is the best way to accomplish this?
PXE boot.
I agree.
Pixie boot. Yeah, we've talked about that, right? A Pixie boot, PXE. So that means you put the image on the server, you go into the BIOS on each of your computers and tell it to boot to the network, which is called a PXE or Pixie boot.
Is that server deployment or is that something?
That's not
completely
server
different?
deployment, that's deploying the operating system on all of your client computers. So, your computer that you have here, all your Windows 10 computers, let's say you bought 50 brand new, or you built 50 brand new computers, the hard drives are blank on them, right? So you plug them all into the network. You tell them to boot to the network. And you have a central server with an image of the Windows 10 operating system on. So that's a lot easier to install the Windows 10, right?
So, yeah. In a corporate environment, that's how mostly it's done nowadays.
It can be done that way. That is one way, or it can be done through an image using like a Cronus or Ghost or something like that, using a third-party program
Oh, okay.
to do
Can
it.
that be done unattended with a badge?
Yeah, well, that's where it gets complicated. I
Right.
mean, it's oversimplifying it. You can create an unattended script.
Yeah.
This is why using things like a Cronus or
Shadow.
or what are the other ones?
Shadow.
Yeah, there's several just imaging the thing without worrying about scripting and all of that as another alternative. Effectively, it does the same thing. So yeah, if you want to do it unattended, depending the way you do it, you may have to create a script. You may have to, and Microsoft does have a utility for creating scripts. A technician is navigating through a Windows operating system via the command prompt. Hey, we all know how to do that, right? The technician, that was a yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, right? Okay, well, we will if we don't at the moment. The technician needs to display the current folder. Which of the following is the best option for doing this?
Sure, yeah.
LS.
LS, right? LS, right? Okay, DIR, right? And LS would be used in what operating system?
Linux.
Or
And
Unix.
Linux, yeah, and Linux. Does LS work on a Mac as well? I would think it would.
Let me check.
Yeah, and you'd have to go to terminal on your Mac and find out.
Yes, it is
Okay.
LS.
Okay, does DIR work on the Mac?
Oh,
It may.
No.
On some versions of Linux, DIR will work as well because you can alias the ls command. You can make an alias of it. All right, a network administrator needs to connect to resources from an off-site location while ensuring the traffic is protected. Which of the following should the administrator use to gain access to the secure network?
VPN.
SSH.
VPN.
VPN.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, are they referring to SSH or VPN?
VPN.
I think they're talking to the network, so I think that would be VPN.
VPN.
I think they'd have to be talking to a specific server for SSH. Does everybody agree on that?
Off-site location, VPN.
VPN.
Okay.
Okay. So let's see if they agree. VPN. Yeah, SSH would be secure as well, but it would be to a specific server.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's how they can be tricky on these questions. Yeah. A user states that when typing in directions on a navigation website, the map is not viewable in a newer web browser. The technician runs updates to Java, but is still unable to view the map. The technician should change which of the following internet options.
I think this might be a compatibility with a browser.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I could
obviously
be
some
wrong.
compatibility. Yeah.
It could be a pop-up blocker.
Pop-up blocker is what I'm thinking. But
Yeah.
I
no,
feel like that's more simple.
Yeah, I have a problem with a application at school right now is it runs in Flash. And of course, Flash is not
Yeah.
supported anymore.
yeah,
So the
because
application doesn't work.
it's Java compatibility view.
Mhm. So what are you guys saying? Which one?
D.
D, pocket blocker? All right,
Mhm.
well, let's take a look, see what they say. A.
Oh,
compatibility
A.
view. Okay, compatibility view.
That
All right.
is wrong.
I won't argue with them. Okay. A technician has successfully completed a GP update. I think we may have mentioned the GP update command. It has to do with group policy. From the command box, so we know the command line box, right? The black one that you type CMD of a user's PC and is ready to move to the next user. Which of the following is the appropriate next step? I think you would close the command prompt, don't you think?
Yeah, because you have to restart, don't you?
I agree.
I think you just want to close it. And, well, the GP update is actually done. When you type the GP update, it will do the group policy update. And what did we say group policies did? Well, I think we talked about it last time.
What?
What kind of, just to give me an example of what you would do with a group policy. And Mike, you're muted.
Set permissions.
Set permissions and read write ability.
It's not, well,
Full
it's not,
control.
policies are not really permissions. They get confused with permissions, but a policy is more like you stop the user from changing their desktop. You stop them from going into the control panel. You stop them from going into the device manager, things like that. So because remember, users have Windows computers at home, so they're used to going to, many of them are used to fiddling around all these places, but in a corporate environment, you want them to do their job, right? You don't want them inadvertently deleting a disk. What was that, Derek?
That's the user from using their workstation as a personal computer.
Yeah, so that's why policies are different from permissions. Where permissions are restrictions typically on files. You allow them to read a file, you allow them to write to a folder, things like that. So those are policies. Permissions are permissions. Policies are when you restrict them from doing something within Windows.
What does
Those
this have
are
to do with CMD?
because you're going to go to the command box to type GP update.
Okay. There's no way to edit all users through the command line?
The question is a bit silly, really. You know, it's obviously what would happen here is you set a new policy, right? And what will happen with that policy? It will eventually refresh to everybody's computer within a day or so. But you know, this user you don't like, right? You don't trust him, so you go over to his machine and you do a GP update to make sure he's got that policy restriction right away or before he comes in, right? So it'd be something like that.
So what was the answer?
Oh, it was. Oh yeah, I didn't show the answer. I'm saying it would be minimum. It would be B, right?
I'm saying B.
Oh, they're saying B and D. I didn't know there was a multiple answer one. Sorry.
We'll select two.
Select two.
Switch
Yeah.
user,
Question
select
mark.
switch user on PC. Okay. Oh, this is multiple users on the same computer, I'm guessing. I didn't figure that part out. Okay. So
D1
I was either.
so this would be, what this would be doing would be updating the policy for each profile. So you would
Oh, no,
switch
you
the
know what I
next,
think they were trying to do, Brian, is that they were trying to not let the user mess with the computer.
yeah,
If you left open the command prompt,
yeah,
because it's going from one user and then ready to move on to the next.
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree. Mhm. And then they're having to switch the next user to update their profile. So the policy restricts their user profile. So that policy is based per user. So you have to make sure, you'd want to make sure in this case that the policy gets applied to all users that use that computer. An administrator is in a remote assistance session sharing a user's desktop while trying to map a shared network drive for the user. An access denied error is encountered while using the user's credentials. Which of the following should be the administrator's next step? Notice he's using the user's credentials and not his own.
C.
See?
C, yeah, open the location. Run as there's an option where you can say run as administrator. And I think we've seen that sometimes, yeah. So we want to run as administrator. If we're logged in as a user, the user won't have full admin credentials. And a user discovers that all of her documents will not open. The documents open properly on another computer. Which of the following tools will be the fastest for a technician to use to allow the documents to open?
Check this.
I think you're right. I think you checked this. Oh, system restore.
Really?
It seems like check this would be an easier way, but maybe I'm not thinking the way they're thinking.
Can you just elaborate on this question? I'm not
On the
quite sure.
question? Okay, system restore backs up certain things. It backs up certain registry information, and it doesn't back up everything on the computer.
I don't think I understood the question here.
Oh, okay, and a user discovers that her documents will not open. Probably what happened, I'm guessing what could happen here is maybe the file association. So let's say their Word documents would not have a DOC extension. Maybe Word will just not open them. Maybe there's some corruption within Microsoft Word.
Corruption in a user profile.
Yeah, corruption in the user profile, possibly. So system restore would quite possibly fix those kinds of things. Okay.
That's why I went with
Like
C.
a restore point?
Check this was
Well,
gonna.
like what? Like what, Mike?
If you would do a system restore, it would do to a restore point?
Yeah, that's what they're talking about. Going back to an earlier restore point is what, yeah, sorry, I didn't mention that part. So does everybody know when you do system restore, you have to have restore points to go back to? But usually every time you install an application or something like that, Microsoft will realize that and automatically generate a restore point. So a lot of times you will have, even if you didn't create them yourself, you will have restore points.
So hence that would be the fastest way to allow documents to open.
Yeah, I mean, it's making a lot of assumptions, but it's certainly,
Or be least invasive.
yeah, obviously you could do not a backup, but a restore from a backup and do it, but that would take longer than so a system restore is like a minor restore where a restore from a backup would, you could restore everything. But it doesn't make sense to make backup. We want the opposite of backup. We want restore. So even if that was what we were going for, it'd have to be restoring a backup.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Okay.
Yeah. I
All
think
right, this one looks a bit tricky because we haven't really talked about TLS. A technician is tasked with enabling TLS, which is a form of encryption, on a client Internet Explorer browser. Which of the following Internet Options tabs should the technician look at to enable the aforementioned TLS settings? Well, TLS is security. TLS is security, so it's more than likely, I don't get deep into this one, more than likely it's going to be under security settings. Okay, it's not. It's on the advanced.
Yeah, that's what I was
Okay.
looking at.
Well,
Okay.
you know where he messed up first, right? He has
Uh-huh.
Internet Explorer.
Yeah, exactly. Internet Explorer. Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. We want to cover this at a later lesson. We could. Okay.
You
And
just check the boxes for TLS server under.
Well, we
under
could have
Internet.
went. Well, okay. You talked me into it. We can go into the control panel and take a look, right? And hopefully they're talking about Internet Options.
It is.
And then they're saying the advanced tab.
Would this be the same as equivalent to open up settings in your internet browser to access the same?
No, they're talking about internet properties.
Okay.
This is exactly where I am right here. And you'll see in here, there are TLS settings in here. If I look through, you can see there's a lot of settings in here. Every once in a while, I'll go through, here they are right here. Use TLS 1, use TLS 1.1, use TLS 1.2, and use TLS 1.3 experimental. So this is where you can enable TLS, with secure web connection. So yeah, right in here, I go in here every once in a while and enable and disable things like Java and things like that in here. So this is where you go for that internet, the internet properties or internet options within the control panel. So yeah, you don't go directly to the browser. I'm not sure about Chrome if this will work for Chrome or not. Okay, so a technician has completed the installation of Windows 7 and needs to add the company's domain, which we will get into. Which of the following control panel options did the technician use to complete the task? And I should have left that open.
It's Windows 7.
Yeah, so here's Windows 7 control panel. By the way, never, 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 ever, never use home group, okay? Have I said that enough?
Why?
Home group is and I believe it's dropped now, is a feature for home networking where you can connect to like your Xbox and things like that and do music sharing.
Okay.
And I mean, you set that up in a corporate environment and your network is just not going to work. It requires pins and different things. It's an oversimplified network that's not really going to be applicable in the corporate world.
How does that differ from work group?
Oh, well, work group is the way we normally do it. Home group, like I said, is based on putting like a pin in each machine and sending up a little home group client. It's not compatible with work groups, and work groups usually migrate into domains later on as your company gets bigger if they don't already start off with a domain. So
Okay,
you start off.
I had work group folders set up on my repair computer.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Alrighty, so let's go into the control panel. Okay, this will actually be, I believe they're talking about under system, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, and why am I bringing up the Windows 10 version of it? This is annoying. The questions are going to refer to, not going to refer to the settings version of it. Oh, you know, I'm in Windows 10 here. Let me read the question again. A technician has completed the installation of Windows 7 and needs to add it to the company's domain. Which of the following control panel options should the technician use to complete this task? Well, first of all, they're going actually system is the answer. I was going to show you that. You need to go into system. Let me see if I can find my virtual here. Okay, let me see if we can do it right here. So I want to go to the control panel. Hopefully you can see this. And I want to go to system. So system is the answer they're looking at. But I want to show you guys this because this is what you're going to have to do when you get into section 2. You're going to have to go over to the right panel where it says advanced system settings. And then you're going to have to go to, unfortunately this is really small, but you're going to have to go to computer name tab. And there are options right down here. The second one that says to rename this computer or change its domain or work group, click change. So this is why we want it in a work group and not a home group, because we want to have this option to click on change, and then we can type in down here, there's a little radio button we can click on and type in the domain when we get to the domain. And you know, when we get into the corporate environment, when we set up real networks, we're talking about setting up domains, okay? So that is what this question is getting into, I assume. That you would click on the system and then you would click into those advanced settings to set it up on a workgroup or a domain. Okay, and they agree with that.
The same in Windows 10.
And the same in Windows 10, except for now in Windows 10, you're gonna click on it and you're gonna go into that settings thing.
Right, but you go into the settings and over here to the left, to the right is an advanced system settings, and you click on that and it looks like it brought up the same window.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Yeah, it's going to change the answers a little bit, I think, in Windows 10.
Just a little bit, yeah.
As they implement more and more with settings. Yeah. So that's going to be a little confusing when you guys are studying for the A+, how they handle that. A technician is installing 40 new bare metal computers into the corporate domain. And we've used the term bare metal before. It means a brand new computer, the hard drive is blank, right? The Windows 8.1 operating system and an Office suite need to be installed quickly as possible. Which of the following methods of installation would best suit the technician's requirements?
D.
Yeah, do an image. Either you could do that Pixie thing we talked about, or we could do something like Acronis, the enterprise version of Acronis, or a free one like Clonezilla. Which was I was trying to think about before I couldn't remember, but you know, that also could be used in a Linux environment as well. I think you could use a Linux server with clone images to clone Windows machines, probably. All right, we'll verify that's the answer. Okay. All right, we'll do a couple more questions and then we'll let you recover. Okay, Derek?
Thank you.
A programmer installed a modified DLL file, and we talked about DLL files. What does DLL stand for?
Dynamic link library.
Dynamic link library.
Yeah, dynamic link library. And what is the purpose of dynamic link libraries?
Provide drivers for the operation.
Yeah, provide drivers and things like that. Yeah, provide common library functions.
Makes it all uniform.
Exactly. Program installed and modified DLL is having problems with Windows not running correctly now. Which of the following commands is best used to repair the computer?
SFC.
Yeah, are we familiar with that, the system file checker?
I had to do that yesterday, actually,
Okay,
on my
good.
machine.
And remember, we use that SFC/scan now. I think we've demoed that a few times. So it's the system file checker.
So does it?
Except it says msconfig. So what were you doing, Mike? What were you saying, Mike?
When you run the SFC, does it look for and restore and fix corrupted files?
Yeah, it should. It should. Why are they saying msconfig? Program installed modified is having problems with Windows running correctly now. Which of the following is best used to repair the computer? I don't know. What would you use in msconfig to do that? Should we take a look at msconfig?
Do you like manually go into msconfig and unmodify the DLL or something?
Maybe it restores it.
Update
Downloads an
drivers,
original
whatever.
Okay, so msconfig, we can modify the way the computer starts up. You know, this is helpful maybe if you had a corrupt DLL and you didn't want to load, but it's saying repair them. So I don't know, is it talking about just being able to boot in then to be able to repair? It's not clear.
What is the
But wouldn't
boot tab?
SFC like fix it automatically?
Yeah. So what was
Sorry
that
for
question,
cutting you off.
Mike?
What's the boot tab?
This is where you can do a safe boot, where you can, if you have multiple operating systems here, if you have a dual boot or triple boot, you could specify which operating system you wanted to boot to. You can see you can boot different ways. You can do a boot log. You can boot without the GUI.
I'm sorry, is this where I would configure it to do a dual boot?
Well, after you did a dual boot, they would appear in here. So usually, if you do a dual boot with Windows, you install the first Windows operating system, then you install it's usually best to start with the newest one. Start with Windows 10, and then if you put Windows 7 in there, Windows 10 will recognize that you're putting Windows 7 and build a boot menu.
I'm sorry,
that-
Brian. I think in the book it mentioned that it's best to start with the oldest operating system.
I think it's best to start with the newest one because I think the newest one will recognize, as far as backward compatibility. It's been a while since I've done dual boots because I do all virtuals now. But I could check on that. Yeah. But what happens when you're running all Windows operating systems, the next actually, no, I think you're right, because yeah, you want to start with the oldest and go to the newest, because the newer ones will be able to detect the older ones. So yeah, you're right.
What does
So-
Active Directory repair do?
Active Directory, we'll get into Active Directory later on. It repairs Active Directory. Okay. And what is Active Directory? Active Directory is what we run on our servers. Active Directory is really, really important in the Windows environment. It's like DNS to the internet. Okay, and we'll get into that. Who asked that question? Was that Jonathan F?
That was Jonathan F.
Are you in network section 2 now or section 1? Which one? Which network section?
I'm gonna ask for that last test to get out of network 2, or get out of network 1 and into network 2.
Okay, so yes, when you get into network 2, you'll be introduced to Active Directory.
Okay.
So Active Directory is the way to control your entire network. All right, services right here, startup tools maybe. Yeah, I'm not quite sure why they're saying this one is msconfig. So I'm not sure on that one.
It gives you a lot of diagnostic tools to check things out under the tools tab. And also in general boot, you can use a diagnostic startup and you can.
Yeah, but that just doesn't seem like, it's something to repair it.
Well, it will help you pinpoint what the.
Yeah,
problem
well, I
is
agree.
first.
Yeah, I agree there.
And I think that's what they're trying to get at. What's the.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's what
I don't know, man.
yeah, I think that's what they're getting at. Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it
It'd be
takes
nice
you a
if
bit of reading into that question to come up with that answer.
It'd be nice
Yeah.
if they offered up reasoning behind some of these answers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the other test, that's what I liked about it. It would explain the answer.
Okay, I'll have to get that one working again. A second hard drive is added to a Windows desktop. A technician must initialize and create volumes on the drive. Which of the following command line utilities should the technician use to accomplish this? And I think most of us are familiar with this one, right?
This part.
Dispart, right, dispart. So we use disk management if we're doing it through the graphical interface, and we use dispart if we're using it through the command line.
What is the LVM?
LVM.
Oh, LVM's a Linux thing.
Okay.
Okay.
All
It's
this volume.
basically you can carry one partition across multiple drives.
Oh, okay. Like that would be spanning in Windows.
Mm-hmm.
You can span a drive.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I remember doing that in Linux. All right. A technician needs to verify and replace important individual system files on a Windows computer? Which of the following will verify and replace protected Windows system files?
SFC.
Yeah, SFC.
Is it SFC or is it system restore?
I'm thinking restore.
SFC.
Okay, so half of us are going with SFC and half of
I'm
us are
with
going.
Derek.
B.
Verify and replace.
There is a switch you can do with SFC, I believe, to do that, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Oh, I'm going with A.
You're going with A? Okay.
A.
All right, and A, yeah. I was pretty sure it was A, but I was getting a little hedging my bet on that one. Because there are switches you can add to the SFC command. After several recipient application updates, a technician has noticed a marked change in the performance of the operating system on client's computer. Several operating system commands no longer seem to function or report file not found errors. The technician suspects the application updates have overwritten some operating system files. The technician wishes to repair the operating system first. Which of the following would be the next course of action?
B.
Okay. System file checker with scan now, probably.
I feel like MS config.
I feel like it could be A because it sounds like a path issue. Because you know on DOS, if you don't have the path and you type a command in the DOS directory, but you're in the root directory and you have no path, let's say you type format or something like that's in the DOS directory, you get file not found. So I'm thinking maybe it is the path. In Windows, the path is not in the object bat like DOS, it's an environment variable now. Anybody going with my thing or are you staying with B?
B.
B, okay, all right, figured. Let's see. B.
So I'm sorry, so system file checker will help you locate those files that we're not able to copy over?
That's why, yeah,
My
system
understanding.
file checker with scan now would look for problems with them. But if they didn't exist, see, that's why I thought it might be an environment variable, because if that's not in the path, you know, those files may exist, but if they're not in the path, just like we do in DOS, if they're not in the path, they don't get found. Let's quickly look up SFC to compare. Oops. And oh, there was one how to repair. Sorry. How to repair corrupted file. Oops, sorry. Okay, Windows experience a blue screen and other things failing. System file checker. You can run. You can do DISM to fix it. Run system file checker command. Troubleshoot methods. Okay, they're showing the typical one we run here, system SFC/scan now. Scan now. It verifies. Gives a Windows resource protection found corrupt files, but was unable to fix some of them. Details are blah, blah, blah. So it does obviously try to fix them. And then if that doesn't work, then we resort to the DISM command. And then we would try system restore. Okay, well, that's so that does agree with the answer of using the system file checker scan now. All right, let's do a couple more. After a Windows update operation, a user reports a Windows 8.1 PC with specialized software is experiencing system lockups. The user states the lockups seem to be random, happening regardless of whether the software is running. The lockups also occur when there are no programs running. Which of the following should the technician do first? Okay, so no programs running, it still locks up.
I'd like to say it's D, or it could be A.
I'm going with C.
D.
B. Well, B would be, I think we look at B because B would be the easiest of them, right? So generally, that's the philosophy on these. Start with the easiest thing, right?
Right.
Oh, it's referring to system lockups, not specific to the software.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we agree it's more than likely B. Yeah, so your system restore would be your easiest thing to start with.
Okay.
All right, which of the following Windows tools allows the user to save system configuration, which would be restore point, right? But system settings, programs, and data files. Okay, so that's going to be more than a system image, right? Because it includes the data files as well.
Full data backup.
Yeah, because a restore point would do the configuration information and system settings, but it wouldn't do your data files. But it says system restore.
It's referring to doing a reinstallation?
Yeah, you couldn't do a reinstallation with system restore. Yeah, okay. I'm a little disagreeing with that one. All righty. In recent versions of the Windows operating system, Microsoft has added an advanced version of the command prompt. Which of the following Windows features is this? Okay, we'll end on this question because we know the answer to this one, right? We'll end on a high point. So what is this advanced command prompt called?
PowerShell.
PowerShell, right. So PowerShell is really cool. It's really powerful, right? It can do all kinds of things.
It's blue.
And it's blue. Yeah. And it starts with PS as a prompt, which is pretty awesome, right? And the thing about PowerShell, especially when you get into servers, is everything that you can do through the GUI, Microsoft says in the latest servers, you can do through the command prompt. Any idea why that would be a really awesome thing?
You could SSH into the server.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much like Linux, yeah. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to run the GUI at all on a server if you can do that. And why might you not want to run the GUI on a server?
It's less secure.
Yeah, it's less secure. And that is a huge thing, right? Making your server more secure. So if you choose not to run the graphical interface on it, it can be less secure. And also it requires much fewer Windows updates. So you're not running as many Windows updates to keep your server secure because it has a smaller footprint. So it has a smaller area for hackers to attack because there's less features on it. All right, so there are any questions or anything anybody needs to go over now? Jonathan D, you're quiet. You've hidden yourself behind your photo now. How about Jacob? You doing okay?
I'm doing good.
Okay, and what are you on, Jacob? What section?
I'm on
Oh, you're in
PC
repair, right? So you're doing okay in repair?
Yeah, I'm doing all right in repair.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm a little over halfway done with it.
Yeah, and Valentin, you're going to be taking your test soon, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
I still need a review though.
okay. Let me know. Need any help?
I'll wait till you guys get to the printer section, end of repair. A lot of fun.
Oh yeah, did you get that printer thing to work? That the tutorial?
Oh yeah, I did the HP printer training.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a pain to get that tutorial to work, isn't it?
It's a long.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. We'll talk to you guys later. If there's no questions, just stick around if you have anything. Okay.
Have a good weekend.
Okay. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.